She was handcuffed at a gas station, searched like a suspect, and humiliated in public. But what those cops didn't know: the woman they thought was powerless would be holding their careers in her hands just 24 hours later. For more stories like this, subscribe to Simply Stories. She drove alone, her black SUV humming steadily over the open highway. The sun had just begun to dip low behind the hills, painting the sky in gold and rust. She was dressed sharply, a dark blue blouse, pressed slacks and heels she'd kicked off hours ago for comfort. She had been on the road for 5 hours, headed cross-country to a legal conference where she'd been invited as the keynote speaker. Her phone buzzed with low signal, just enough to pull up directions. She spotted a rest stop ahead and pulled in to refuel and stretch her legs. It looked quiet, too quiet. Across the lot, parked under the shade of an old oak tree, a white police cruiser sat idle. 2 local deputies, their sleeves rolled up in mirrored sunglasses hiding their eyes, watched the SUV roll in. One leaned over and muttered, "She doesn't look like she belongs around here." The other smirked. They stayed put at first, just observing. Then, as she stepped out of her car and started toward the convenience store, they slowly pulled out of their spot and began circling the lot. She noticed them, of course. Years in the justice system had sharpened her instincts. She kept her posture calm and made no sudden moves. Inside, she bought a bottle of water and a snack. When she returned to her car and started the engine, the cruiser pulled up fast, blocking her exit. The officer stepped out casually, one resting his hand on his belt. She rolled down her window halfway. "License and registration, please," the taller one said. She raised an eyebrow. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" "Match the description of a suspect wanted for auto theft," the second officer snapped. "Black female, dark SUV, step out of the vehicle." She calmly handed over her license and registration. "This is my car, registered in my name. I'm an officer of the court on my way to—" "We didn't ask for your resume the first," officer interrupted. "Out of the vehicle." Now, a few people in the parking lot paused, sensing the tension. She opened her door slowly and stepped out. Before she could finish another sentence, her hands were yanked behind her back, and cold metal cuffs were slapped onto her wrists. The officers twisted her arms roughly, ignoring her protest. "This is unnecessary," she said firmly. "You're making a mistake." They ignored her. One began rifling through her SUV, tossing her briefcase aside, scattering legal documents and a tablet across the passenger seat. The other walked her toward the cruiser, cuffed hands behind her back, head held high. She glanced at a family, frozen near the gas pumps. "Record this," she said loudly. A trucker nearby pulled out his phone and began filming. "She didn't do anything," he shouted. "This is messed up, back off." One cop barked. "This doesn't concern you." "Oh, it concerns all of us," the trucker muttered. Still recording in the back of the police car, the woman sat silently as the door slammed shut. The officers got in and began driving. One turned to the other and laughed. "Bet she thought dressing up would make her above suspicion." "She probably teaches diversity training somewhere," the other scoffed. "Hope she learned something tonight." She said nothing. Her gaze was steady, fixed out the window. Every second that passed, she mentally noted the violations stacking. Against them, no probable cause, unlawful search, excessive force, at the station. She was let in through the back, still cuffed. They fingerprinted her, took a mugshot, and tossed her into a holding cell without even reading her full rights. The paperwork listed vague charges: obstruction of justice, resisting arrest, nothing that would hold. They didn't care, they thought. They'd done their job. They thought she was just another black woman passing through town. She sat on the cold bench, hands now free, but dignity tested. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her. The cell smelled of bleach and old concrete. Yet, she showed no fear, no tears, no panic, just silence, just stillness. She looked up at the clock on the wall and tracked every minute. In her mind, she reviewed the laws they broke, the rights they trampled, and the oath they clearly never honored. She remembered the names on their badges. Every detail. Every insult, every bruise on her wrist, they saw a threat. She knew she was a mirror. A mirror to their bias, their arrogance, their failure to uphold the law they claimed to protect. And as the hours crawled toward morning, she waited, unshaken, unmoved, unbent. She had no idea they'd be seeing her again so soon, but they had no idea who she really was. The morning sun filtered through the barred window, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. She sat with the same unshaken posture she had held all night. No one offered an apology when the cell door finally clicked open. One of the officers, less smug now, was still wearing the same crooked grin, told her the charges were being dropped due to a clerical error. His tone was dry, dismissive, like the whole thing had been an inconvenience for them. "You're free to go," he said. "Next time, just cooperate. Makes it easier for everyone." She said nothing. She simply stood, smoothed the wrinkles from her slacks, and followed them through the hallway to the release desk. A bored receptionist handed her a clipboard. She signed the release papers without hesitation, her signature sharp and deliberate. The receptionist paused, eyes flicking to her name, then to her face, as if something was just starting to click. She didn't wait for the moment to land. She walked out the station doors slowly, shoulders square, head high. Across town, the courthouse buzzed with activity. It was a routine day on the docket, several hearings, motions, and one internal disciplinary proceeding involving 2 local deputies accused of excessive force. The complaint had been triggered by a viral video posted just hours ago. The trucker's footage had caught traction overnight, shared by civil rights pages, retweeted by a city councilwoman, and flagged by the District Oversight Board. Policy required a formal hearing within 24 hours for any misconduct caught on video. So, here they were. The 2 officers strolled into the courthouse lobby, uniforms crisp, ties knotted, but their attitude unchanged. One leaned toward the other. "You believe this?" he said. "Some overblown social media circus, probably. End up in front of some diversity hire looking to make a statement." The other chuckled. "They'll slap our wrists, tell us to take a training course and call it progress." Their union representative, a stout, overconfident man with a folder under his arm, met them outside the courtroom. "Relax," he said. "Worst case, you get a suspension. These things are usually optics." The courtroom was quiet when they entered. A few board members sat at the long desk up front. Legal aides scribbled notes. A clerk organized files near the judge's bench. The union rep whispered to the officers to keep answers short. No attitude, no apologies unless asked. They nodded, still relaxed. Then the doors opened. The room shifted. She entered wearing a black judicial robe. Her hair neatly tied back, heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. In her hand was the case file. No hesitation, no introduction. She walked straight to the bench and took her seat. Behind it, the silence was instant, electric. The officers stared in disbelief. One blinked as if seeing a ghost. The other opened his mouth, but no words came. Their union rep stood frozen, trying to mask the panic behind his eyes. She glanced briefly at them, then down at the folder. "I see we're all present," she said calmly. "Let's proceed." The union rep cleared his throat. "Your Honor, with all due respect, given the circumstances, we'd like to request a recusal. This seems irregular." Her eyes met his, cool and unwavering. "Was assigned this case at random. It's under policy, a judge may only be recused if they express personal bias. I have not, and I won't. If you wish to challenge that, you may file with the Ethics Committee. However, delaying a misconduct hearing violates the 24-hour statute. Shall we continue?" He hesitated, trapped by procedure. Refusing her would only raise more questions, more headlines, more eyes. He backed down with a nod. She opened the file. "Let's begin with the incident report filed by Officers 2145 and 2147. Her voice never rose above measured professionalism. But every word carried weight. The report was read aloud, dry, sanitized, and false. It claimed she was uncooperative, agitated, matching the description of a known suspect. It stated she refused to identify herself and resisted arrest. She let the report finish, then gestured to the clerk. "Play the footage." The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the screen flickered on. First came the trucker's video, clear, shaky, but damning. The scene unfolded exactly as it had. Her calm demeanor, their aggression, the unnecessary handcuffs, the bystanders shouting in protest. Then came the body cam footage. Their own cameras showed them laughing in the cruiser. One officer mocked her tone. The other made assumptions about what type of woman she was. The timeline shattered their report completely. When the screen went dark, the silence was deeper than before. She folded her hands on the bench. "Do you have any additional evidence to support your version of events?" The union rep muttered. We'd like a moment to confer." "No need," she replied. "The evidence is sufficient. The purpose of this hearing is not to retry. Fact sits to determine whether your actions violated protocol, civil rights law, and the standards of this department. We will continue." The officers said nothing now. Their smirks were gone. Her shoulders had sagged. She turned to the board. "I will continue my review of the footage and testimony. A recommendation will be issued before the close of the day." She rose from the bench, case file in hand. Her robe flowed behind her like a curtain falling on a play's final act. The courtroom remained still until the doors closed behind her. The officer sat motionless. The union rep leaned in, voice barely above. Whisper. "You really messed with the wrong woman." The courtroom was still when she returned, her robe flowing behind her, the file tucked neatly under her arm. She resumed her place at the bench without fanfare, her eyes scanning the room. Officers sat stiffer now, hands folded, their earlier confidence long since drained. Their union representative leaned forward, tense but quiet, as she opened the hearing once more. "We will now proceed with the questioning," she said, her voice poised and calm.
"Your officers."
"You claimed in your report that you had probable cause to stop and search the vehicle. Please explain to this board what that probable cause was." The taller officer cleared his throat. "The vehicle matched the description of a car involved in a theft earlier that week, a black SUV, similar make." "And did you have confirmation of the license plate?" "No, Your Honor." "Did you run the registration before initiating contact?" "Not before." "No, we did afterward." "Did dispatch confirm any outstanding warrants or alerts on the driver?" "No." She nodded slowly, then continued, her tone never changing. "Your decision to stop and detain her was based on ... a visual match of a common vehicle." The officer shifted uncomfortably. There were additional factors. She looked nervous. She repeated, not as a question, but as a mirror. She was in a high theft area and acted evasively. By purchasing bottled water and returning to her vehicle, he opened his mouth, then closed it. She turned to the second officer. "Did the driver raise her voice or physically resist arrest at any time?" "No." "But did she refuse to provide identification?" "No." "Did she verbally threaten either of you?" "No, Your Honor." She turned. A page in the file. "Your body camera footage recorded your statement." And I quote, "She probably teaches diversity training somewhere. Is that part of standard field procedure?" The officer glanced at the attorney, who said nothing. He looked back at the judge, then shook his head. "Let's move to the next portion." She motioned toward the clerk. "Bring in the first witness." The door opened, and the trucker stepped in broad-shouldered, denim jacket, ball cap in hand. He approached the stand, was sworn in, and sat down. "Tell us what you saw at the rest stop," she asked, folding her hands. "I saw a well-dressed woman buying a snack and getting back in her car," he said. Then these two pulled in, blocked her, and started hassling her. She didn't yell, didn't resist. She just stood there while they cuffed her. I started filming when it got out of hand. "Why did you decide to post the video?" "Because it didn't sit right. She wasn't doing anything wrong, and they just ... treated her like she didn't matter, like she didn't belong." "Thank you. No further questions." The trucker stepped down. And two other witnesses followed. an older couple who had been filling up their RV. They both echoed the same story. Calm woman. Aggressive stop. No explanation given. The union attorney stood then, trying to shift the narrative. Your Honor, while we understand the emotional impact of these testimonies, it's important to consider the environment law enforcement officers operate in. Decisions have to be made quickly. Mistakes? Mistakes? She interjected. Would you characterize this incident as a mistake? Or perhaps an overstep? An overstep that involved handcuffing a law-abiding citizen, searching her property without consent, detaining her overnight, and filing false charges? Is that the overstep you mean? He paused, caught in the trap of his own excuse. They didn't have a warrant, no. Nor consent. No. Nor any verified match between the vehicle and any known suspect. He hesitated, then said quietly, no. She let that linger. Let the record show that the attorney for the defense has confirmed the officers acted without warrant, without consent, and without valid suspicion. She leaned back slightly. Her voice softened, but it carried even more. Wait. For the sake of transparency, I will disclose that I have a legal background specializing in civil rights. Before my appointment to the bench, I served as deputy counsel for the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and prior to that, I worked in federal litigation involving unlawful arrests and racial profiling. I've reviewed more cases like this than I can count. Some were tragic, some were deeply unjust. But rarely have I seen one where the evidence so clearly illustrates a systemic failure within a single stop. She paused to flip through another page. There have been 3 prior complaints filed against these same officers, each from Black or Latino motorists alleging wrongful stops and use of force. 2 were dismissed for lack of video evidence. The 3rd is still pending review. The officers looked down, their silence damning. She closed the folder and placed it gently on the bench. Before I issue my decision, I would like to read something into the record. She lifted a small leather-bound booklet and opened to a page. Her voice was steady. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. She closed the book and looked directly at the officers. Those aren't just poetic words. They are the foundation of this country's legal system. You swore to uphold those rights, not to weaponize authority against those who simply don't look like you. No one in the courtroom moved. No one dared. I will now reassess briefly to prepare the final decision. This hearing will reconvene shortly. She stood, gavelled the session closed, and exited through the side door. Leaving behind a silence heavy with consequence, the courtroom doors opened with a quiet creak, and she entered again, calm, deliberate, steady as ever. Her black robe trailed softly behind her as she stepped up to the bench. Every eye in the room followed her. No one whispered. No one moved. The air was thick with anticipation, with reckoning. She placed the case file before her, adjusted the microphone, and spoke with the kind of clarity that cuts through everything else in the world. This court is back in session. I am now ready to issue my findings and recommendation. She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle before continuing. After thorough review of the body camera footage, eyewitness testimonies, and the officer's own report, I find the actions taken during the detainment of the civilian in question to be unlawful and in direct violation of departmental code, constitutional rights, and basic standards of human decency. The officer sat rigidly, faces pale. Their union representative didn't speak. Individuals tasked with upholding the law used excessive force during a baseless stop. They failed to articulate any legitimate probable cause. They conducted a vehicle search without consent or warrant. They detained a law-abiding citizen without justification, falsified portions of their report, and allowed their personal bias to influence professional conduct. Such behavior is not only unacceptable, it is dangerous. No one interrupted her. Not a cough. Not a whisper. I am formally recommending the following: suspension without pay for a period of no less than 90 days. Mandatory enrollment in certified civil rights and bias training. An immediate referral to the Internal Affairs Division for a full investigation into patterns of misconduct. Further disciplinary action, including termination, will depend on the outcome of that investigation. The words fell like thunder, not loud but impossible to ignore. She didn't raise her voice once. She looked directly at the two officers now. It's not as a judge, not as someone seeking revenge, but as someone speaking a truth they had refused to see. "This wasn't just about me," she said. "This is about every person who's been treated like a suspect for existing in their own skin. It's about the quiet damage done every day in places like rest stops, sidewalks, and street corners. It's about trust broken not by criminals, but by those sworn to protect." She turned slightly, now addressing the public gallery. For justice to mean anything, it must apply equally to all. It includes officers with badges. It includes judges in robes. No one is above the law, and no one should be beneath its protection. The gallery erupted into a quiet, respectful silence. The kind of silence reserved for moments that say everything. Outside, the storm had already begun. The trucker's video, once just a clip on a social feed, had exploded across the internet. News vans crowded the courthouse parking lot, reporters jostling for camera angles. Civil rights organizations issued statements. Public officials responded. Her name was on headlines. Not just for what had been done to her, but for how she responded when she had the power to make it right. The two officers were escorted out a side door by internal affairs within the hour. One looked dazed. The other looked broken. By evening, word spread that one of them had resigned, quietly, with no statement. She did not hold a press conference. She didn't wait for interviews or praise. As the sun dipped low once more, she walked out of the courthouse the same way she had entered it, quietly, with dignity. Her steps were slow, not tired, but purposeful, like someone who just closed a door that should never have been opened. Her car was parked around the back, not the same SUV from the rest stop. She'd left that one at the impound lot as a reminder. This one was newer, sleek. She drove out of town without music, without noise, just the sound of tires rolling forward over pavement. An hour later, she pulled into another gas station. A different place, a different energy. She stepped out to fill her tank, the pump clicking softly under her hand. Across the lot, a woman nudged her friend and pointed. A young man in a hoodie walked past, slowed, then turned back to nod, respectfully. The clerk inside the store paused from restocking shelves, just long enough to make eye contact and offer a small smile. No one said a word, but everything was understood. As the sun set behind her, the soft glow of justice lingered not in cameras or headlines, but in the quiet recognition that something had been made right. Some people wear the robe of justice every day, so others only learn its meaning when it's used against them. Either way, truth has a way of finding its voice,